Тепер я задам питання аудиторії, яке потім задам одному з наших виступаючих, Еріку Берглофу. Питання звучить так. Чому Україна так відстала в розвитку від сусідів в Центральній Європі?
First of all, it's fantastic to be back in Lviv, and I'm so in love with the city, so I brought my whole staff from EBRD once here because I think Lviv really combines the history and all the reminders that we need to have about the European history in terms of the violence and so that happened in Europe over the last 2 centuries at least. But the second reason is that there is so much hope here, and so much, if you want to be reminded of the future and the importance of Europe, coming here is so important. So why was it difficult for Ukraine to make the transition? Well, I think it's ultimately up to the fact that you had a much stronger legacy of the Soviet Union than you had in the countries that have succeeded. And that's of course also closely tied to the alternative E here, that you are not offered in the same way as they were the route to European membership. So I think it's that combination, but it all traces back to the legacy of the Soviet Union. And of course the Baltic states had that as well, but I think there it was weaker, and also they were more integrated in a local context, a Nordic context that helped them. So is there no responsibility on Ukraine itself? Of course there is, and I think what makes it particularly challenging now is that you did try, and it didn't work out exactly as you wanted in the past. I probably have a chance later on to say, why I think it could be different, and I think it will be different this time. But the reason, I think, is the challenge that you faced at the start.
To see what the audience thinks. У нас вже є результати. Can I ask you to comment on this a little bit? As you see, the favorite is number B, which says that it's just because Ukraine didn't have any history of establishment, of their own establishment, because all the decisions have been made in Moscow. So this is something that a little bit, it does not coincide. It has something to do with former communist regime, but has different meaning as well. So Ukraine was a part of empire, or just was a colony of a big empire. So do you think it's only that happens with everybody who didn't have a tradition of their own, government and their own establishment, or just communist regime in particular gains it and increases this disability to govern properly?
Well, so I think my answer kind of embraced that view that it's part of the Soviet legacy was the fact that you didn't have the sort of institutions in place to run your own country or run your own economy. Having said that, I've heard that argument in many other countries. I mean, I heard it in Poland, which I think it's wrong in Poland, but it was certainly something that was said at the time, that there was no tradition, and Poland had been wiped out. Poland had no entrepreneurship. Poland could not agree on anything. These kind of sort of simplifications probably don't help very much. But of course, it is there are so many aspects to this legacy. It's about that. It's about the incredibly centralized control that you have inherited, which made local participation very difficult. Which there was no real power locally to a real capacity to run public services, which I think is the way forward in Ukraine to really get citizens involved in all parts of the country and feel that they have some influence over healthcare, over education, and so on. All those things you inherited from the past, and you have to deal with them. So I think, of course, it is quite humbling that so many people also feel that the Stalin period was so important, and I think that's part of the legacy, but it's something that is, of course, very hard for an outsider to really understand. And you know, I have a friend, or Tim and I have a friend who is now working on a book on the 30s in Ukraine and the 40s, and that is you know, something that she comes back very depressed every day from working on she's working on the starvation, and I think that is something that you know, we probably can never take in as outsiders.
Thank you. May I interfere a little bit into the agenda, and just before the next question, I'll ask one more comment to all the speakers, if you want. Do you think it could have, we have this discussion all the time in Ukraine, do you think the part of the problem could lie also in cultural, or what they say, mental features or issues of Ukrainians? This is a big discussion here in Ukraine, so probably Tim, you or some other people can comment on that.
There's a very popular school of thought in the United States, and in a different way also in Russia, which says Ukraine is a divided society and there's some kind of line down the middle of Ukraine. I studied with a brilliant political scientist called Sam Huntington, whose whole book, The Clash of Civilizations, depended on the idea that there was a line between one civilization and another civilization. And as a very young man, as a student, I argued with him against this idea. I said that civilizations, in so much as they exist, they're blurry and the lines can move. And one of the things that I notice watching Ukraine in the last 25 years, as of course my friends and colleagues have done too, is that Ukraine has changed very fast, very fast. Some things that were typical of Lviv in the 1990s
Absolutely.
Are typical of Kiev in the 2000s, and things that are typical of Kiev in the 2000s are now typical of Dnipropetrovsk in the 2010s. In other words, of course there's culture, and of course culture matters, but history is not a death sentence. History is a basket of opportunities, and history changes very fast. So I think that Ukraine is different than Poland, and is different than Germany, and is different than France in interesting ways. I think Ukraine is the most interesting country in Europe. That's why I'm here. But I think every culture can move from where it is towards Europe. That is the whole history of European integration. Ireland did it, and Portugal did it, and Italy did it, and Sweden did it. These are all very different societies with different cultures, but all of them can find a way to make European identity and European history part of the way they see themselves, their present, and their past. So yes to cultural difference, but also yes to change, to adaptability, and to possibility.